Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I'm Tiana Gotzi. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the events coordinator for Natural Lands. I'd like to welcome you to our Outdoors Online Outstanding Owls of PA webinar. I had to throw in a fun little verb in there, or I guess adjective, sorry. With Allegheny Land Trust Senior Director of Education and Curriculum, Julie Travaglini. Thank you so much for joining us, Julie. And if you have been here with us before, you know you're in for a treat, or should I say tonight, a hoot. I had to. Before we get started, a few things to note. The event is recorded. If you leave, no worries, you can rejoin. We will be sharing the recording with you after the event, usually within 7 business days. Due to the webinar style, you will remain muted. If you have any questions, please leave them in the Q&A feature or in the chat, and I will be able to assist you at the end and make sure all of them get answered. If you are having any technical difficulties, please message me or leave a comment in the chat and I will assist you. So quickly before we begin, I'd like to introduce Natural Lands. I know many of you are familiar with us, but we always have some new members that join us this evening. So I want to thank you for your support. We are a nonprofit organization serving Eastern Pennsylvania and Southern New Jersey to preserve and nurture nature's wonders and create opportunities for joy and discovery in the outdoors for everyone. We've been at it since the early 1950s, and today nearly 5 million people live within 5 miles of land under our permanent protection, which is just wonderful. So how do we do it? Our mission is land for life, nature for all, and we accomplish this in a variety of ways, saving open space by permanently protecting natural areas through acquisition and voluntary land protection agreements, and by helping communities preserve more of their land. So far, we've saved more than 125,000 acres. We care for nature, which we do by taking care of our network of 40 plus nature preserves. As you've all shared in the chat, some of your favorites and closest to you, thank you. And our one public garden located in 2 states and 13 counties, all of which total over 23,000 acres. And my very favorite, connecting people with the outdoors and each other like we are doing tonight, even online, by creating opportunities for people to connect with and learn from nature. And a brief moment to thank each and every one of our Natural Lands members who are here with us today. Your support makes all the stewardship work you see on our preserves and all of these events possible. Thank you for your significant impact you have on our efforts to save open space, care for nature, and connect people to the outdoors. If you're not a member yet, it would mean so much if you would look forward to joining. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for. Happy to introduce our presenter, Julie Travaglini. And as I mentioned before, she works for Allegheny Land Trust in Pittsburgh and will do a wonderful introduction for herself. So take it away, Julie.
Thank you. I appreciated the hoot joke.
The hoot, I had to.
I've
I'm
I've
so punny.
already I've already warned my fiance that this is one of the webinars where he gets to hear my bird calls again. So he's in the kitchen making dinner,
I
forewarned
love
that
this.
strange noises will be coming from this room here
I'm even more excited.
very, very shortly.
Your fiance is
Oh
very
God.
lucky. I hope he knows.
He would probably describe it differently. Oh gosh.
I love it.
All right. There we go. Make sure the subtitles are going. Thank you, Tiana. All right. Oh, good. They're at the top today. You know what? I don't want them there. I had them there for another talk, and I don't care for them much at the top. Okay. Now we're going to go back. That's better. Oh, no, that's still not where I want them. Sorry, they're not
Oh, you're good.
listening to me today. Okay.
Bad subtitle.
There we go. That's where I want them to be. Off of my slides so that you can see all my owl pictures. All right. Well, like Tiana said, my name is Julie. I'm the Senior Director of Education and Curriculum for Allegheny Land Trust. And if you don't know who ALT is, we are a nationally accredited nonprofit. Our whole mission is to help local people save local land. We are like a Pittsburgh, much smaller version of natural lands. So you all have like tens of thousands of acres. We have 4,000, which is a lot for us. We are a smaller team than natural lands. But those acres spanned everything from wetlands and abandoned mine drainage sites to steep hillsides and biologically diverse areas, wildflower reserves, old golf courses. We have two old golf courses, actually, that nature has reclaimed, but just a wide range of green space in and around the city of Pittsburgh that folks can go out and enjoy sun up to sundown for all sorts of things like hiking, biking, bird watching, hunting, and fishing on some of the properties, and just all sorts of stuff. But I get, and I'm a little biased, but I get what I think is the best job at ALT in that I lead our education team. So, our education team at ALT is a team of two. If you come to an ALT education event, you are going to meet me or Sarah, because those are the only two folks at ALT who are running our education events. And we get to teach people a wide range of things. Everything from, webinars like this to we teach classes. Well, I teach classes on wild edibles. Sarah's a little more safety conscious than me. I'll let you eat things out of the woods. So I teach a lot of wild edible classes, and we do mushroom walks and birding walks. And oh my gosh, we're doing a talk and walk on moss here in June. So, like, all sorts of stuff. But between us, we see between 7 and 10,000 people a year at a little over 200 events, which is just wild. We visit a lot of schools, a lot of libraries, senior centers, all sorts of different things. We have once a month free webinars that we host as well. And oh gosh, you name it, and we've probably taught people at that location about it. We've taught at a mall before, so it's all over the place. But hopefully, and I know Tiana's really good about putting things in the chat, she can put our website in the chat and you can see, I know you guys are on the other side of the state, but we have tons of virtual programming. And if you happen to be on this side of the state, we do so many programs, the odds are good that there's one probably happening in the time frame you're in Pittsburgh. So you can check those out and just see and learn about ALT and all the different things we are up to over on our little snowy side of the state. I told Tiana earlier, like, I hope you guys all one stay safe in the weather, and it's snowing here, so we're getting two very different weather systems right now. It was 60 degrees earlier, and now like the ground is covered in snow. Crazy, crazy weather. But anywho, today is all of I make myself laugh. Today is all about owls, and owls are really some of the coolest creatures that are out there. And I know I say that about like all the animals, but owls really, truly, maybe I lied all those other times, but owls are like especially neat animals. And there's not like a ton of owls in the whole wide world, like 200 species in the whole world. To put that into perspective, there's 400 species of bees in just Pennsylvania. 400 species of bees. And there's, in Pennsylvania, we think about 8,000 species of fungus just in Pennsylvania, but only 200 species of owls across the whole world. So they're not a super numerous family of creatures. And that's because owls are apex predators, which means they are the top of their food chain. Only some of the smaller owls get preyed upon by other things, like other owls, which is what we'll get into in a minute. Kind of weird, but they do that. But they're kind of the top of the food chain. And when you're at the top of the food chain, there can't be a whole ton of you because y'all won't make it, right? So things like mice and rodents are always at the bottom of the food chain. They get eaten by lots of things. But those creatures at the top who are doing all the eating are always less numerous. So the higher up the food chain you go, the smaller numbers, and generally the smaller types of numbers as well. So not just are there less owls by number, but there's less species. And that's true of a lot of different apex predators around the world. Now, owls in particular are nocturnal, and I'm sure most of you know what nocturnal means, but just in case you don't, nocturnal means they are night lovers. Now, that doesn't specifically mean they are flying in the absolute dead of night, 3 in the morning. Most of the time, it means like sundown and like right after after the sun sets and when it's newly dark, not necessarily middle of the night time frame. So keep that in mind, that nocturnal does not always mean middle of the night. Are there creatures out and about in the middle of the night? Yes, of course, but owls generally do what they need to do and then relax for the rest of the night. All owls are one, nocturnal, and they're two, birds of prey. And we'll talk what it means to be a bird of prey here in a moment, but specifically, birds of prey are creatures that hunt others. So they are active hunters. They are out looking for food to eat all the time. They are not like an ambush predator, like a rattlesnake that just hides and waits and snatches something that comes by, or spiders that sit in a web and wait for food to get stuck. No, they are active hunters out looking and hunting for things to eat, aka meat. They're not going to be out there eating berries and nuts and seeds. They specifically are carnivores that want to eat live food. And what they eat depends on the owl in particular here. But what we'll see, generally speaking, is that owls will eat anything they can catch. If they can catch it, they're probably going to eat it. So they're not super picky eaters, which works to their advantage. And part of that advantage is that, owls evolved essentially to become nocturnal because they fill the exact same niche or exact same role as hawks do during the day. So not everybody could come out in the daytime and hunt and live and breed and survive in the day. There's just not enough resources for everybody to do the exact same thing. Like, we all don't have the exact same job, and it's very similar in nature. We can't all do the same thing. So owls evolved to come out at night or after the sun has set, so that they have different food sources, they're better able to survive, there's less competition, and it works out for everybody. Then we all get to survive when we fill different roles. So essentially, owls are nighttime hawks. There are owls, now there's only 200 species of owls around the world, but they're found all over the world except some remote islands in like Antarctica. There's no like Antarctic polar owls. There's snowy owls, but not polar owls. So no owls down in Antarctica. And some of those remote islands just can't sustain owls because remember, they're the top of the food chain. Owls range in size, and now the range looks fairly small. 1 ounce to 10 pounds. So, like, no owls are over 10 pounds, but keep in mind that birds have hollow bones because they need to be light to be able to fly. Flying is very energetically expensive, and you can't fly if you're a big, heavy bird. It just doesn't work. Your wings aren't built that way to support that kind of weight, so they have those hollow bones. So 10 pounds is about the maximum an owl is going to be, and that's our large, like, Eurasian eagle owl, which that woman is holding in that photo. We do not have the smallest or the largest owls here in Pennsylvania. The smallest is that elf owl on the top, which you can see he's in somebody's hand. He's very tiny. And 1 ounce, by the way, is about how much a slice of bread weighs. So next time you pick up a slice of bread to make a sandwich, think about that weighing as much as the smallest owl in the world, that little elf owl. Now, the eagle owl, 26 inches, that's like toddler sized. That is a toddler sized owl. And coming in at about 10 pounds, which is fairly heavy for a bird. A hummingbird weighs as much as a nickel. And the elf owl weighs as much as a slice of bread, and this eagle owl weighs about as much as a really big newborn. So, a fairly decent sized owl weight-wise. Now, again, we don't have either two of those, but we will see our largest and smallest owl here in Pennsylvania. And we will talk about them here in a moment. And I always like to include, if I can, if we're talking about like an animal, what the group of animal is called, because some of them are really hilarious. Like a group of rattlesnakes is called a Roomba, which is strange, and a group of frogs is called an army, but a group of owls is called a parliament, which sounds really smart, and we'll talk about maybe why that is here kind of towards the end. Now, owls across the board, all 200 species, they're all birds of prey. And to be a bird of prey, that kind of gives you a standard set of adaptations and some shared traits among all those different 200 species. You can take one from here and one from Southeast Asia, and they are going to have the exact same traits because they're all birds of prey. Now, if you're a bird of prey, that means you're catching live animals to eat. And to be able to do that, you have to have some pretty specific adaptations. So I'll start at the top of the owl and we'll go down. So if we look at the top of the owl, let's look at their eyeballs. So first off, an owl's eyes are really large. They are large for their body. Most of the time, our eyes are a little bit more like smaller compared to our head, but an owl's eyes are fairly large. They don't just look large, they are big, and they face forward. Now, that's an adaptation of all animals that are hunters, is forward facing eyes. So if you look at an animal and it's got its eyes in the front, here's the fun phrase for you. Ready? Eyes in front, I will hunt. Eyes on the side, run and hide. So if an animal's eyes are forward facing and in the front, they are a predator. If an animal has eyes on the side, they're the prey and they're going to run and hide, because animals on the side that have eyes on the side of their head, those eyes are better at looking all around and looking for predators. So they need kind of like that overall visual, greater field of depth to be able to see all around them, to see a predator coming like overhead or behind them. But an owl has those big old forward facing eyeballs to be able to hunt their prey. Now, what is typical of all nocturnal animals is that their eyes have more rods than cones. So rods and cones are the things that are in your eyeballs. We have them in our eyeballs that help you see color and depth and light and all of those good things that essentially paint a picture on your eye. Now, in nocturnal animals, they have more rods than cones. Cones, C for cones, helps you see color, C for color. So cones in your eyes helps you pick up a whole lot of color and detail. Folks that have color blindness are, don't have as many cones, or their cones don't work the same way. But if you're a nocturnal animal and you're coming out at dusk and later when it's dark out, you don't need to be able to see the color orange versus the color red. It just doesn't matter to you because you're in the dark, you're in the twilight, and those colors are all muted anyway. So they have more rods than they do cones, and the rods of your eyes are what allow light in to help you see in the dark. Well, that makes a whole lot of sense. If you're coming out at night, who cares if something's blue or orange, but I do care how much light gets into my eye to help me see shadows and movements and make out shapes of objects. So owls' eyes are very, very much adapted to the nighttime with all those rods and less cones to let in as much light as possible for as long as possible so they can see really, really well in the dark. Now, something else that helps them see well in the dark is their neck. And you might be thinking, how does their neck have anything to do with their eyeballs? Well, an owl's eyeballs, an owl can blink. He's got eyelids. He actually has a couple sets of eyelids. However, an owl cannot get sassy with you. Like an owl cannot roll its eyes or move its eyes back and forth in the socket. Their eyes are fixed in the socket. They can't move at all. No eye rolling for owls. To be able to turn their head to look at something, or to turn their eyes to look at something, they have to turn their whole head. So those eyes are fixed. They cannot move. They cannot look back and forth like I'm doing, or up and down, any of that. They've got to turn their entire neck to be able to do that. Now, we as people can turn our neck about 180 degrees, maybe a little less, depending on how recently you've been to the chiropractor, but generally 180 or less, which is basically side to side, saying no. An owl, however, has extra vertebrae in its neck. In fact, it has twice the vertebrae of other animals that allows it to turn its neck 270 degrees. So essentially, if I'm looking straight ahead, I can turn my head all the way to the right until I'm looking at the left. So 270. Now that's not 360. Some people say they can turn their head 360. Why? You don't, like, if you're already looking this direction, you don't need to spin it around to look in that direction again, right? That doesn't make any sense. So 270, which is 3/4, which is pretty darn impressive. So 270 degrees, and again, that is double the neck vertebrae. Humans have 7, dogs have 7, most birds have 7, giraffe have 7, an owl has 14. So those added neck vertebrae allow for that flexibility in the neck to allow him to get that neck around 270 degrees to see essentially in an opposite direction, which is pretty cool. Now, aside from eyes that are big and let in lots of light to help an owl see, and the neck that helps it turn its head in all sorts of different directions. They also have really unique ears. So an owl doesn't have external ears like we do. Like, you can't see my ears, they're under my headphones, but they don't have external ears. And a lot of people think those tufts on that is a great horned owl are ears. They're not. They're feather tufts. And those tufts, scientists, they like to debate about everything, but they debate about what those tufts actually do, if they like filter ears into, or they filter sound into the ears, or if they are just like a distraction on some species, but verdict's out. But the actual ears of an owl are holes on the side of their head. And they're not just holes. I'm sitting crooked in my chair. You can't see. So they're not holes like right here. They're holes like this. One of them is slightly off center than the other, so they're not perfectly symmetrical. They are asymmetrical. And those asymmetrical holes allow sound to hit their ears at slightly, just ever so like tenths of hundredths of a second sound difference of a noise hitting one ear hole versus the other. That combination of the asymmetrical ears and the sounds hitting at two different milliseconds essentially, and the sharpness of their eyesight in the dark, they can triangulate prey within a second of hearing it, less than a second of hearing it, and they can hear a prey, say like a mouse, from a football field away. Their hearing is so good. They can hear a mouse moving in the grass an entire football field away. And as they hear that mouse and they hear that grass shifting and moving, the sound hits their ears and they triangulate and they're able to swoop down and get that mouse. And we'll talk about how they do that here momentarily too. But really incredible set of senses that they have to be able to almost it's almost like a bat's echolocation, but they're triangulating with their sense of sight and their asymmetrical ears. Wild stuff. Now, I always tell kids when we talk about owls, can an owl go get a knife and fork and chop up that mouse that it just caught? And of course the answer is no. So essentially, an owl's knife and fork is its beak and its talons. So an owl's beak is sharp and it's hooked, and that hooked beak helps it to rip and tear at prey. And those talons are able to exert some larger species of owl are able to exert hundreds of pounds of pressure onto something. Because think about it, if you're an owl and you happen to catch a fish, what do fish do? They do this as soon as they're like not in the water. And that's hard to hold on to. So those talons can grasp like up to hundreds of pounds per square inch of pressure on something like a fish or a snake that is wiggling and moving the second it's picked up, to be able to cart it off and eat it. So incredibly sharp, strong talons and that hooked, sharp beak that help them to grab and cut and tear at that prey. So we've got asymmetrical ears that are excellent at hearing, big huge eyeballs that are fixed in the socket that have more rods than cones that are good at letting in light, sharp beak for ripping and tearing, flexible neck for turning their head, and those sharp, sharp talons for grasping. Now, another really special part of an owl, or adaptation of an owl, are their feathers. So most birds you hear coming, right? You tend to hear them, you hear them rustling. I think of like a mourning dove in particular. Mourning doves are like incapable of landing or taking off without making noise. Like, you always hear them before you see them because they're just noisy birds. Like, you hear them rustling and chattering as they take off and land, but owls' feathers are uniquely adapted to be completely silent. So once that owl triangulates a mouse from a football field away, he takes off from his perch, and as he's flying, as he's flapping his wings, you hear nothing. The owl is completely silent in flight, and that's important because it's nighttime. And while sometimes it can be noisy at night, think of especially in the springtime when we've got peepers like frogs and the occasional like coyote howling and things like that, but for the most part it's generally pretty quiet at night. So you can't be like a mourning dove and making a hoop and holler every time you go and leave or come back, because everything's going to hear you and you're never going to catch anything to eat. So those owl feathers are incredibly special. If you look at the tips of them, especially of their flight feathers on their wings, they're serrated like a comb, and that allows air to filter through. So instead of the air catching and you hear it like going up and down as the wings flap, that wind goes right through it and you hear nothing at all. And we talked a little bit before the webinar started. If you tuned in early, you caught us chatting a little bit about the fact that many of you said that you have never seen an owl in the wild, and there's really good reason for that. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that one, they're generally not out when we're out, and two, they're really good at camouflage. So we're not going to see any like red owls or like bright colored owls like we would see in our songbirds, like our blue jays and our cardinals. Owls are very dull colored, black, brown, gray, cream, tans, very neutral colors, and that is to camouflage against their surroundings, which a lot of the time are trees, to help them blend in. And you've probably gone for walks, walked right past a sleeping owl, and never even noticed because they are so good at blending in to their surroundings. Okay. Owlets. We have to talk about baby owls because right now, baby owls are generally already pretty well on their way to adulthood. So, owls are some of our earliest nesters. They generally are nesting in like January, and they will have owlets really early because that gives the owlets an advantage. While it may be harder to find food to feed the owlets, they tend to be grown and on their own and hunting on their own right about springtime. And right about springtime is when everyone else tends to have their babies. So, right as the owlets are on their own and really mastering the skill of hunting for themselves, a whole lot of vulnerable baby animals are being born all over nature. So, it's kind of like easy picking sometimes for the owlets. And, that's by design. They lay the eggs early and they have the babies early so that they are kind of given that time advantage of being able to hunt on their own right at a time when lots of mice and lots of, snakes and lots of, other mammals especially are having their young early in the springtime. And there's more for them to hunt, and they're easier to hunt because when you're young, you're more vulnerable. So that's why they kind of do that so early. But something else you should know about owls is that they're super lazy. There is not a single species of owl across the 200 species that makes a nest. Owls are not nest builders. You will not see an owl picking up sticks or twigs or anything like that to make a nest. None of them do that. They either inhabit old nests from a nest builder like a hawk or a crow, sometimes like an osprey or a raven, things like that. Bigger birds, obviously they're not going to sit in like a sparrow nest, but more commonly you'll see them in what are called tree snags. Tree snags are dead trees that have fallen over or trees that have broken at the top, and when trees succumb to a lot of different diseases or fungi and rots, they are hollowed out in the middle, and owls love that. They love to get in there. It's a nice, safe, protected space for them to raise those owlets. Lots of people, I always try to put this in every talk I do, but those pre-made boxes are fine. You just have to know that you can't just buy one for what you want and stick it up and think you're going to get that creature. So every single pre-made box, whether it's a barn owl box or a bluebird box or a bat box or a duck box, whatever it is, you have to follow the really specific set of instructions that animal wants. So like every creature is different. You have to have it in the right habitat. You have to have it in the right. Some of them will only nest in, ones facing a certain direction, like east or west or whatever it may be. So it has to be facing the right direction, the right distance off the ground. Sometimes they want to be close to another one. Sometimes they don't want to be anywhere near it. It's like you have to do the research on those for them to actually be useful for what they're for. And also just know that squirrels and chipmunks and flying squirrels and all sorts of creatures, not what you want, also love those boxes and are way less picky. So just know you can put up the box, but it may take years and years if you ever get the intended animal in it. So just know that. I think last time I checked one of our boxes at ALT's properties, I was checking, I think it was an owl box, and a flying squirrel flew out at me and I almost fell down the ladder. So just know there might be some surprises in there. You also have to keep them clean too, because if you don't keep them clean, they can breed diseases and mites and fungi and all sort mold and all sorts of stuff you don't want to get into an animal's lungs. Any animal, no matter what it is. Okay, so general owl biology covered. Sorta. I mean, we could go on forever about general owl biology, but we gotta move on. So, Pennsylvania has 8 owls, which isn't a ton of owls, but 8 kind of tends to be like a lucky number. We have like 8 or 9 different, uh, woodpeckers and some other things hit the number 8. I don't know why. It just is what it is. But 8 owls here in Pennsylvania, 7 of which are breeding residents, which means they have their young here, and 1 spends winters here. Who is the winter only resident? Who on this list is the winter only owl? Nice fish impersonation. Thanks, Michelle. I'm glad you liked mine. Yeah, you guys got it. There's no tricking you. A snowy owl. Yes, the snowy owl is our winter visitor. But because there's only 8, I would be remiss and lazy if I didn't talk about each one of those. So we are going to cover all 8. Now, when I do webinars about like the native bees and there's 400 species or, even like 21 species of snake, harder to get to all of those. But when there's only 8, we got to cover them all. So we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these species of owl. Now, first one up, I heard a couple people say the screech owl earlier when we were having our pre-webinar talk here. Mentioned the screech owl. This is one of our most numerous owls, and there's lots of different species of screech owl. So we have the Eastern Screech-owl. There's lots of other ones located throughout the Americas. In the Western Hemisphere, it's not on the Eastern Hemisphere. These are New World owls versus Old World owls. But this is one that is here year round, all around, breeds, has babies here, spends winters here, lives here all the time. Now, they are only 7 to 10 inches tall, which, if you think about it, my favorite way to measure things is with very practical things, because I am not a numbers person. Numbers and art, not my thing. Really specifically science here. But a dollar bill is 6 inches, so a screech owl is generally just a little bit over a dollar bill, like a dollar bill and a half at the max. Their wingspan is only 18 to 24 inches, so pretty small, little 1.5 foot wingspan. And this is our second smallest owl. We have an owl smaller than the screech owl, and it is not the elf owl. Remember, I said we do not have the world's smallest owl here, but we do have one that is less than half a pound, which we'll see him here in a bit. The Eastern screech owl, definitely, I see this one probably second most commonly, I would say. I see the great horned, which we'll see next. I see the great horn probably most, and then the screech owl second. Not that I see a ton of owls, but in my owl experience, I see this one second most. These little guys are adorable, and they come in 2 color morphs, that kind of red color in the back and the gray color in the front. I think for me personally, I've seen more of the gray, but that's probably different for everyone. And screech owls are really special and really adorable, and they raise babies together. They practice biparental care, so the mother and the father, they stay together, they're monogamous, they stay in their pair, and they raise their owlets together, which we don't always see in nature. A lot of times they are either one left to their own devices, laid eggs and gone, or it's just one parent left to care for them while the other one goes off and finds even more mates or, does his solo male thing off by himself while the lady does all the work. Very rarely is the male left. I think seahorses do that, and that's about it. But screech owls take care of them together. Here comes my excellent screech owl noise. So a screech owl doesn't make a typical like whoo noise of an owl. They make more of a whinny. They almost sound like a high-pitched horse. They're like whoo 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 whoo. Um, enjoy, enjoy my owl noises. But that is our little screech owl. Probably our most. Look at all those hearts coming in. My fiance does not send the heart emoji to my owl noises. I don't think. Um, he's also ignoring me. I can't hear him saying anything through my headphones. But our screech owl, probably most numerous owl we have here. Great horned owl. This one I see more commonly than the little owl. And again, that's probably because this owl, maybe not more numerous, but he's way bigger. He's easier to spot. The great horned owl also really loves perching on the highest part of a tree. So oftentimes you'll see them in the evening at twilight as the sun is going down. Look along the top of the trees and see if you see this owl's silhouette on the top of the trees, because they like to be at the top so that they can perch and watch for things to eat and swoop down and snag it. So check the tree line for your great horned owl. That's when you're likely to see them. Permanent PA resident, lives here, breeds here, winters here, all that good stuff. He is our largest owl in Pennsylvania by size, but not by weight. So he is the tallest and has a really big wingspan comparatively to most of our other owls. However, he is not the thickest owl of all the owls we have. So he comes in at about 3 pounds, which pretty light. I mean, the largest is 10. We don't have a 10-pound owl here, but we do have one that gets fairly bigger than 3 pounds. So he is our tallest by height and wingspan, but not so much by weight. Now, he is a little bit weird, and our little screech owl, our tiny precious little baby screech owls, who will eat just about anything from cicadas, like cicada season, top notch for screech owls. Like, they will just pluck those things up and eat them like crazy. Invertebrates, when they're little, they'll grab earthworms and things like that. The great horned owl, though, he eats screech owls. He has been known to eat screech owls and other birds, small mammals, lizards, snakes, you name it. If he can get his beak on it, he's going to eat it. It does not matter what family or kingdom it comes from. If it is a living creature and he can catch it, he's probably going to eat it, which is part of the reason why he's so widespread, because he's not picky. And most owls aren't. To be fair, most owls are not picky, but most are not also eating other birds, especially other owls. So the great horned owl is a little unique in that way, in that they, will fairly regularly take other owls or other birds to eat. A great horned owl, here comes he's a hoo 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 hoo. He's got the low pitch, kind of like typical, like stereotypical owl call of the hooting. You'll hear him very regularly. Oh my gosh, they're so. You guys are making me laugh. They very commonly, you will hear them hooting. They kind of sound like a deeper nighttime mourning dove. So like if you take the mourning dove call, it's kind of like that coo. The great horned owl, you'll hear it at night, and it's a little lower pitched, but it kind of similar in cadence to what you hear a mourning dove making during the day. And there's his big old horns that are not actually horns; they're just feather tufts. He's pretty cool. Pretty cool owl. One of my personal favorite owls, and I like this owl mostly because I have a fun story with it, is that, my partner and I, we are trying to visit all the national parks, and we went to Congaree in South Carolina, and, never read the Google reviews on things like national parks. Like restaurants, sure. National parks, no. And like all the Google reviews were like, this park sucks. It's so small, it's so buggy, and it's so hot. And I'm like, well, it's a swamp. But we went down there. One of the best little parks. Like, yeah, it's tiny, but we were like 10 feet into the trail, and a barred owl just like swooped down right in front of us and sat on a tree and was just like hanging out. It was so cool. One of my favorite national park memories. Just barred owl just like swooped down out of nowhere. It's pretty cool. But the barred owl, barred, like jail bars, not barn. We have the barn owl as well, but the barred owl, he gets that name because of the striping on his breast. You can see his feather patterns kind of make it look like he has like vertical stripes on his chest. That's pretty unique. Lots of other kind of mottled patterns, but he kind of very stripy. He is our second largest owl in size behind our great horned owl friend, but he is only 2 pounds, so he's a whole pound lighter, 30% lighter than the great horned owl. He's very, very light on his feet, and he prefers to be in dense forest. So, like at the national park we were at, you'll see barred owls here. Don't get me wrong, you don't have to go to a national park to see a barred owl, but they do prefer the more dense forested areas. Great horned owls, more opportunistic. You'll see them in lots of different habitats. Screech owls kind of like to be in the forest, but like right on the edge of like a meadow and more open area, whereas the barred owl prefers to be like totally in the woods, hanging out and hunting pretty much anything he can find out of the woods. He will eat anything opportunistic. Not as commonly going to be eating birds as our great horned owl, but he's in the forest, so he's got a little more options. Lots of mice, lots of rodents, lots of voles. He'll take insects as well, especially when they're young. But I love the barred owl, one of my favorites, and he's one of the only eastern U.S. owls with brown eyes. I think we have one other one in PA that has brown eyes, but his eyes, instead of having like the yellow or the orangey look like some of the other ones do, they are solid brown, which makes their eyes look even bigger, and I think makes them look even more adorable. Like it just makes their eyes look big and huge and so cute. But I love the barred owl. Look at that face. What's not to love about that face? I mean, the talons are terrifying, and so is the beak, but his face as a whole is very sweet, and I just really like them. Their call, I can't forget their call. Their call is incredibly, what do we call it? Melodic. It's very melodic, almost like a tune. And a lot of the times we can take an animal's call and put like English words to it to help us remember what that sound is or what that call is. And the barred owl is a perfect example of that because the cadence of their call sounds like someone saying, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" And their call is, "Hoo hoo hoo hoo, hoo 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 hoo." So it's like it has that rhythmic, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" But with hooting. Another very common one. Go for a walk in the woods in the evening and you will probably hear a barred owl. They very, very common. And I know most of you are like, I've never seen one. Well, yeah, that's the point. So they don't want you to see them. But there's a barred owl that hangs out in Frick Park a lot, which I know you guys probably, I forget you're on the other side of the state, but Tiana can probably put in the chat some places where different owls have been spotted on you guys' property on your side of the state. So probably have some barred owls hanging out around you. Now, not to be confused, the barn owl, one of our most unique looking owls. He doesn't really look like the rest. He's got that beautiful heart-shaped face, and his beak has got some like feathery coverings over the top, so it looks like a big old snout in the middle of his face, which is very strange. But it covers that beak so that he doesn't look as scary to predators, perhaps. I made that up. I don't know if that's why he has feathers on his beak. Maybe. But barn owls are found all over the world. Lots of different species of barn owls. So like there's like subspecies of barn owls all over the world. And this is another one that is a permanent Pennsylvania resident, lives here, breeds here, winters here. And unfortunately, numbers have been declining. And honestly, this is true of most things in nature, especially birds, that numbers are decreasing with habitat loss and our changing climate and all sorts of different reasons. But barn owls in particular, we have noticed a fairly decent decline in. Now, barn owls get the name barn owls because they were found in barns. When we first started building barns, owls were like, "Woohoo, I'm coming in." And they moved in, and because that's smart, because remember, they don't build a nest. No owl builds a nest. So they moved on into our buildings that we built. So we were like, "Cool, that's a barn owl." Native Americans did not call them barn owls. They probably called them something else. But we built barns, they moved in, and here we are with barn owls. And they also got a bad rap because people thought they were drinking the milk from cows. which we know is absolutely not true. They don't want anything to do with that, but they were probably really enjoying the rodents that were also partaking in the food that we were feeding the cows and horses and chickens and pigs and all that stuff. So barn owls, nicknamed barn owls because they moved on into our barns, but did not partake in milking of cows as originally thought. Barn owls are unique in the fact that they have a ton of owlets. If the conditions are right and if they have enough food, they can have up to 11 owlets at once. 11! That is like well past Octomom territory. Like, that is so many baby owls to feed. But if the food's there, they will have that many because they will support that many population wise. It's important to reproduce when you can. That's the whole point of nature. And they do mate for life too, which is really interesting. So we don't see this common, especially in birds, but they will mate for life and again have 11 owlets at once, which is wild. That's so many owlets. Now, I'm not going to make their call because their call literally sounds like someone on an ID channel murder mystery show screaming. Like, it is. I made the noise one time, and the next day my neighbor asked if I was okay. Because, like, I yelled. And the next day she was like, "Were you all right?" I was like, "Yeah, I was making an owl noise." Fine. My neighbors don't talk to me much now. They leave me alone. But it is a really high pitched scream. Like, it does not, like, you would never think. Look it up. You can look it up on like a Merlin or any of the bird ID apps that are out there. Audubon. It's wild. It literally sounds like someone screaming. You never imagine that noise comes out of a bird. Long-eared owl. Now, on my side of the state, we really don't have long-eared owls. Their populations are mostly in the middle and eastern side of the state. They are listed as threatened here in PA, like, so we know their numbers are declining and they're declining quick. They are fairly small, 12 to 16 inches, so not a very big owl, very secretive, don't like to be seen at all. And the reason why their numbers are suffering as much as they are is that they prefer conifers, pine stands, pine forests, and we just don't have that much of those left here in Pennsylvania. So we don't have huge, massive pine forests any longer, and that's really problematic for them because that is their preferred. Sorry, my fire smoke detector's going off. Sorry if you heard that. But they are really struggling numbers wise because of the decrease in conifer stands across the state. Now, they are aptly named. Sometimes in nature we like to name things like totally randomly. Not here. So the long-eared owl has got those big old tufts of ears on his head, and we do have a short-eared owl. Where there's a long-eared, there's got to be a short-eared, and we'll see him next. But our long-eared owl, I've never seen one. And again, here on the western side of the state, we don't really have any populations. They're mostly eastern and central part of the state. They have a fairly typical owl call, a hoo, hoo, hoo. Like, not very exciting. That owl call was not nearly as impressive as some of the other owl calls, but it is like a typical, like, hoo of an owl hooting. he, he we are our oven. There's something wrong with it, and every time we cook something in the oven, particularly, and open the door, it will set off the smoke detector. So it's like not surprising that that happened. It is not burnt. It is just how our house is, and we don't know why. Anywho, it'll probably go off again too, because where there's one, there's usually 2 to 3. But where there's the long-eared owl, there is indeed the short-eared owl. And unfortunately, our short-eared owl is in even more trouble than the long-eared owl. He is listed as endangered in PA, which is a step beyond threatened. So, like, threatened is like, oh, we know something's going on. Endangered is like, uh-oh, like, numbers are down. This is not getting better. We need to put some more specific structures in place to help them. So, they are endangered. I've never seen a short-eared owl. Again, most of their populations are central and eastern side of the state as well. You guys really lucked out with the owls. You've got way more than we do, species number wise. But one of the problems for these guys is the fact that they are ground nesters. Because remember, we said owls are lazy, no nest building. But the problem is, if you lay your eggs directly on the ground, you get trampled. So lots of times their nests just aren't very successful. And the eggs that they lay don't ever make it to adulthood. And they prefer open country, particularly like agricultural areas. One, we don't have as much of that anymore. And two, if you're laying your eggs on the ground in an agricultural area, that guarantees that people and machinery and equipment and sometimes animals are in and around that area, and that's more things to trample your nest, more predators to take your eggs to eat them. So they really just don't have a high success rate with their nests, which is really unfortunate. But kind of is the problem with like ground nesting is one of those trade-offs of it's way easier and it's easier to protect and hide sometimes, but also at the same time it's way easier. Like if you lay your eggs up in a snag of a tree, like a great horned owl, a predator can't just come along and take them out of that tree. They've got to put some effort into it if they can reach them at all. And, ground nesters, they can just walk right up on it and take it. So, evolutionary trade off there. Short eared owls sound like if a frog and a duck mated. It is like a. Ah! It is also very bizarre. It does not sound like a bird, let alone an owl. So I will let you Google that one mostly for yourself too. I need to get another drink of water before I. Or orange juice. I have orange juice tonight. Might be getting a cold, so I was like, I better drink some orange juice. That'll fix it, right? Vitamin C fixes everything. Now here is our sweet, precious, tiniest baby owl that we have, our northern saw-whet owl. Northern saw-whets are cool for a couple different reasons. One, they're the smallest owl. 2.5 to 4 ounces. Again, a slice of bread is about an ounce. So like when you're making a sandwich and you make like grab 2 pieces of bread, that's on the smaller side of a saw-whet. But 2 to 4 pieces of bread, about how much a saw-whet weighs. 6 to 8 inches, so about the size of a dollar bill. Very, very teeny tiny little guys. And saw-whets are particularly interesting to scientists because they are migratory, but we can't figure out how or why or what's the point. So like some of them migrate, some don't. They don't migrate to specific places. Like we know some animals when they migrate, they're like must go to this particular latitude and longitude on this date to survive. And it's a very strict, we know point A to point B, where they're going, we know where they stop, we know why, what date. We don't know for saw-whet owls. And so there's lots of research going on out there, and if you ever get the chance, there's lots of saw-whet banding happening, and I know here in Pittsburgh we have a couple folks who do it at different locations, and they welcome the public to come. So they set up mist nets, and they are there, until 2 in the morning probably. I don't know. I'm not a night owl, so I don't go, but they mist net for owls, and then they will band them, and they take some statistics on them, whether male, female, how old they are, and then they let them go. The owls are perfectly fine. But they've been studying like where they go, and then other banders in other parts of the country, if they do this and they catch an owl that has been banded, they put it in and they see where that owl is going, and we're trying to figure out like what are they doing, why, where, what's like the thought process of a saw-whet owl to decide to migrate or not, and where are they going. So lots of interesting stuff around there. I'm sure your local Audubon Society has some information on that, or some of your local bird loving groups out your way probably are doing saw-whet owl banding. Highly recommend going. I've gone once in years past, and I've gone to some songbird banding as well. And it's a really cool experience to see those birds up close and see the scientists like take, measurements, and you get to help with some of that stuff. So it's a really, really awesome experience to get up close with some of our wildlife in a very safe and monitored way. Their whistle is a really adorable tooting. It's like a toot toot, not quite that high pitched, but it does sound like a whistle toot, like a child's toy whistle. Very similar sounding. And one of my friends, if you love saw-whet owls, one of my friends is the founder of Bird Lab. It's a nonprofit over here in Pittsburgh, and I'll see if I can find it at the end here, but his nonprofit Bird Lab does a ton of bird banding and bird research, and he had a Saw-Whet Owl Toot Toot shirt made up as a fundraiser for his organization, and it's one of my favorite shirts. So I'll see if I can find it. Bird Lab, what was it, bonfire or something like that. I'll see if I can find it, but it was an adorable little Saw-Whet Owl that had Toot Toot written on it. It was very cute. Good fundraising shirt. But yeah, we're trying to figure out what they're doing, why they're going, and unfortunate for them is because of their size, and this kind of rings true for screech owls as well, although screech owls tend to prefer a little bit more of a wooded habitat. But our northern saw-whets tend to compete with starlings and woodpeckers for nesting spots because they're similar sized. And saw-whets, although they are birds of prey and they are top, they're apex predators, they're tiny little apex predators, but they're still up there. They're not as kind of bossy as starlings and woodpeckers can be, so generally they lose when they're fighting with starlings or woodpeckers for those nest cavities, because those are all cavity nesters. They all want the same things, and the saw-whet owl, unfortunately, ends up losing out, and he doesn't have as many nest spots to raise young. So it's unfortunate, especially because starlings are invasive and we don't like them. Last but not least, our snowy owl, our owl that is here only in the winter time. Now, he's here in the winter, and it's not every year. It's not every year we see snowy owls in Pennsylvania. It's really dependent on what the weather and patterns are in their home territory, which is the polar regions, northern Asia, northern Canada, the Arctic Circle. Really depends. If those winters are mild up north, they have no reason to come here in the winter. But if their winters are particularly harsh, that's when we start to see them in Pennsylvania coming down a little farther south for better food to survive the winter. So generally these guys, we don't get them. I'm in like the southern part. I'm south of Pittsburgh, so we generally don't get them this far south, but we do get them up around the airport and up around Lake Erie, because their favorite thing is giant open habitats. Like the bigger, the more open, the better. They like to be able to see for long distances to be able to hunt food, and that makes sense. Think of like the Arctic. It's very vast, wide open space. So that's what they like. So we tend to see them on the Great Lakes because they sit right on the lake shore, and also at airports because airports are big and flat and open. So that's where they tend to be seen the most, is around those areas. They also tend to sound like a barking duck. Like if a duck could quack bark, it would be the snowy owl. Very fascinating. Again, sounds absolutely nothing like you would think an owl, a majestic, beautiful owl sounds like. And then it's like, and that's like all it makes. It's like so strange. It's bizarre. Look it up. I don't do it justice. I can handle like the screech owl and those guys. I can handle their calls. I can't do like the quacky barkies. I gotta like practice those a little more. Oh gosh. But I do want you to note, so not the biggest owl by height or by wingspan, but the biggest owl by weight. Remember, we said the great horned owl is the biggest height and wingspan wise. The snowy owl is like twice the weight of a great horned owl, and that's because they have to be, because they live in the Arctic. If you're in the Arctic, you need to have even like the lightest of fat reserves to keep you a little warmer. So these guys are just a bigger, heavier, bulkier owl to keep warm in the Arctic. So they are our thickest owl, but not our biggest owl. I love them. I think they are so pretty. All right, before we fully wrap up, I always like to talk a little bit about the creature that we have discussed in traditional folklore, whether that's, not our typical United States folklore, because our folklore is other people's folklore, right? Native Americans who were here first have some incredible folklore about owls, as owls being symbols of wisdom and guardians of the underworld. They could speak to the dead because, especially out west where there's a lot of burrowing owls, and bats sometimes have this connotation as well, as being able to speak to the dead and protector of the underworld. Similarly, because they come from caves, they live underground in caves, similar burrowing owls do the same thing. Lots of tales of the snowy owl giving Raven his dark colors, so that's why the snowy owl is white and the Raven is dark, is that the um, snowy owl gave away all of his dark feathers to another bird. Owls are seen as bringers of healing and wisdom and knowledge and good health, power and the ability to heal entire villages, wisdom with Athena, the Greek goddess. If we're looking at like Eastern European folklore, owls are traditionally seen as wise, smarts. You know, we look at how many colleges and universities have an owl as a mascot. Very, very positively. Now, however, here in Appalachia, we tend to see the owl as signifying death or bad luck, which is traced back to Western European roots. So, if you are Scottish, Irish, Welsh, English, you tend to have a more negative connotation, and we see this a lot across. Spiders is a prime example of, you know, how Eastern and Western Europeans see a creature very, very differently, and it happens here with owls too. So owls, that's part of our culture, like with the Gaelic mythology associated owls with the ruler of winter and not with the goddess of wisdom. So a very different scenario there. And prime example, my mom, who is very much Irish and Welsh and Scottish and all things Western European, she feels this way about owls. Always when I was growing up, she would always say that owls were bad luck, and if you heard an owl hooting at night, it meant that death was near. It's like, no, mom, it just means an owl lives outside. But that was the tradition. But our neighbor, when I was growing up, was Eastern European, so she saw owls as like luck and wisdom and all the good things, and she used to collect owls, like owls everywhere, statues, clocks, owls all over the place. And my mom did not like going to her house very much because the owls creeped her out. She saw it very differently. So it was always interesting to hear those two with their owl chatter. But very, very different folklores. And of course, we talk a little about folklore, and we always wrap up with a funny. Those must be barn owls for there to be that many of them. Always gotta wrap up with the funny. All right. What questions do you have about owls?
Thank you, Julie. This was amazing.
Ooh, one of your colleges, Bryn Mawr has an owl, and Temple the owl, yeah.
And Stella. Somebody asked, my wife is of Pakistani heritage, and in Urdu, ulu, meaning owl, is used for fool, idiot, stupid. And why is that, I wonder?
I would love for you to ask her and teach me why. I don't know. I have
Yeah.
no clue.
Rob wants to know, do owls eat dead animals or just live ones that they hunt down?
Live. Yeah. Not so much scavengers. They will take live any day of the week.
Vanessa says you are the best presenter.
Oh, well, thanks, Vanessa.
Matt says, do the mountainous terrain in southwestern PA provide habitat for some of the owls?
Oh, yeah, we definitely do. We have lots of screech owls and great horned owls and barred owls and barn owls and saw-whet owls. So you've got at least five. What is the rarest owl in Pennsylvania? Or like everywhere? Everywhere I don't know. I would say the rarest owl in Pennsylvania is probably that short-eared owl, the endangered owl.
Sad.
Yeah,
Do
probably
owl
bad.
pet? Yeah, I know. That makes me really sad. Cassie wants to know, do owl pellets vary a lot by species?
Um, Size, yes. They're all owl vomit, so essentially vomit can only be different so much, right? So it's all pelleted into a compact little nugget. So yes, a great horned owl pellet is going to look very different than like a screech owl pellet. But for the most part, depending on what they ate, is what's going to be what's in there. So you know, your great horned owl, you're more likely to see like bird beaks in there than if
Okay.
you get a screech owl or a barred owl presentation or pellet. I was looking at the chat. If you get their pellet,
Yes.
probably not going to see bird, but you're going to see lots of voles and moles and mice and the occasional snake skeleton or at least the head.
I love dissecting the owl pellets and seeing all the stuff there.
You never know what you're going to get in there.
Yeah. Heather asks for the ground nester. Does Natural Lands help by providing blocked off territory to nest in? We do have ground nesting bird territory, and that is why we often say, please do not go off trail
Mm,
because you are tromping all over and leash your dogs. Please leash your dogs because
yes,
your dogs will
yes.
just go and find that nest and
Mm-hmm.
eat or whatever disturb those owls, and they will not come back. So please leash your
Yeah.
dogs, stay on trail. Yeah.
And everything from like really common killdeer to that owl to some of our like wetland birds are ground nesters. So it's
Wow. Yeah.
really important to keep your dog on a leash. And don't get me wrong, I took my dog hiking this weekend on a leash.
Yes.
I love dogs
So
and I love
important.
taking my dogs with me too, but it's really important to do that and to be respectful. Like those rules are there for a reason. And I know for like ALT, that's one of the biggest challenges we have. One of the biggest.
It's so hard because how do you like you can't really enforce that, but it's just trying to
No.
spread the knowledge of why we ask
Yeah.
that. And it's not that we don't love freedom of dogs, it's that they're
Yeah.
literally destroying and upsetting
Right.
habitats for
We've had
birds.
to like we have police that will patrol and go down to our
Good.
properties and
I
people
wish
have
we
gotten
had that.
tickets. Yeah. Yeah,
That's awesome.
they've given tickets.
We can
Yeah.
only verbally threaten, but luckily we
Big
are
ticket.
private property, so if you are found after dusk, you'll get in trouble. But yeah, so
Mm.
don't do that.
So yeah, see we stay open sun up to sundown, but can't really enforce that either.
Right?
So,
Yeah. It's so difficult, but
it is. It
thank
is.
you all for being respectful and
Yes,
helping
thank
our
you.
birds.
Yes. Please follow the rules. Take your
Yes,
trash.
it's important. Yes, leave no trace.
Yes.
Matt says, are the owl pellets encased by feathers from their grooming like cats? Oh, good idea.
Generally, yeah, generally not feathers. It's more the fur. So they're generally full of the compact fur from the animals they ate. Yeah, not so much their own feathers.
Bird.
Generally, when a bird grooms its feathers, it plucks them out. It doesn't eat them like a cat. Cats are, lick everything. But if a bird is grooming, the feather generally comes out. They don't ingest it.
That's so cool. Thank you. Lori wants to know or says we had two annual successful great horned owl nests with two owlets each in the same location, and we didn't have any sign of a third season. Any idea why? And may they be close? Should we scout further?
You mean like two in one season, or like just 2 years in a row?
Looks like two annual successful nests.
Oh, so two a
So
year.
two in a
They,
year.
I
Yeah.
mean, the owls may have moved on. They may not be alive. They don't live. Birds don't live forever. Well, parrots do, but
Oh,
owls not as much. Their average life is a little shorter, and their breeding age is even shorter than that. So, they may not be alive. They may have moved on. The babies generally, once they hatch and are fledged, are generally, will go and leave. They may not always go super far, but they're probably not going to come to the exact same place.
Betty wants to know how many short-eared owls are left.
Couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you. I could maybe Google it. I don't know how helpful that would be, but
And
oops,
that
sorry
was
about that.
one, just to bring this up, I know this kind of goes in conjunction with the ground nesting protection. We had an issue at one of our preserves where that got spread to the public and people were not being very considerate or respectful for the birds and they chased off the short-eared owls. So please do not spread it around. If you see it,
Yeah,
it's really a big issue. So that's why we often say like don't even put if you see an owl nesting, don't put it on iNaturalist.
yeah,
Like they're very protected species.
yeah. You can like put that stuff, but you can obscure the data so that you
Yes.
can't see exactly where.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for
We do
that
that with
note.
like play like if there's a rare like orchid or something that comes up because it's sad that a lot of times we can't trust people that
I
Just
know.
show up and think, well, look at that cool flower and pluck it, and
And then it's gone.
unfortunate.
Yes. So thank you all for being respectful.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the information. Short-eared owls, according to the state of Pennsylvania, the second bird breeding atlas from 2004 to 2008 found short-eared owls in only 7 out of 4,937 blocks, indicating extreme rarity as a breeding species in the state. Um, Previously, 50 pairs were found in a regional study in the mid 80s, but it is believed to have dropped even further. So, not
Wow.
many at all left in Pennsylvania. Now, I will say, just because they're endangered here in Pennsylvania does not mean they are endangered everywhere. So, like, you could go to New York or, Toronto or Ohio or another very close by place, and that owl may not even be listed as threatened. It's statewide. Like, until they're listed as, like, federally endangered, we can't call them, like, endangered across the board. So, the short eared owl could be doing incredibly well in so many other places. It just happens to be here in Pennsylvania they are labeled as endangered.
Thanks for that clarification. That's good to know too. But one other question. Are the recurrence of meadows good news for owls?
Like us bringing back meadows and like trying to put more meadows in. Yeah, I mean, it
Okay.
depends on what was there before. So
Yes,
if we're
meadow
chopping down
restoration.
forest to put in meadow, that's not necessarily great. That's, a robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of situation. But if we're restoring, areas that have been, strip mined or abandoned or things like that, then yeah, absolutely. But we shouldn't take from other habitats to create that one. Um, yeah, it really all depends what was there before.
Yeah.
I mean, taking out invasives and planting natives is always a good idea in any habitat situation.
Yeah, and I think in PA, basically everything, every meadow wants to be a forest. So
Mm-hmm.
we keep meadows by like controlled burns, which is a
Yep.
type of conservation, just so we have the meadow habitat. But if you kind of let a meadow go, it's going to become a forest.
Oh yeah, yeah. We have like a mowing plan where every couple years a
Yeah.
different section of meadow gets mowed, so it doesn't do that.
Yes.
Lawn to meadow. Oh yeah, that's good.
Oh,
Lawns
yes.
are lawns are the devil.
Yes, they are.
Pretty much
But
anything you do to like eliminate lawn that's not just making a giant mud pit is probably going to be good.
yes, so good. Okay, one final question. Are there southern owls that might come up with some of the southern vegetation due to climate change?
Possible. I know generally when you're at the top of the food chain though, you're kind of like the last to make that change.
Mm,
We'll probably see, unfortunately, invasive species come up first, which is what we're seeing. We're seeing things like kudzu come up. And some of the more southern species are starting to be able to tolerate this weather. So I know we're seeing things like crepe myrtles that are now doing okay here, and some of can't think of any off the top of my head otherwise, but there's a lot of southern species that are now like making it through our winters when they never have before. So we'll probably see those first, but it's gonna happen. We're already seeing red foxes into Arctic fox territory. So like there's now like interbreeding and predation between the different fox types because we're seeing the red fox be able to go farther into the Arctic fox's territory. So yeah, probably yes, but it will take a while for that tier of the food chain to get here. A lot of the like little not so good stuff moves in first. And I mean, honestly, those owls moving here isn't a good thing either for our native species. So we don't want that to happen. We want them to stay where they are.
let's hope that doesn't happen. Yeah, but it's a good question and good thing to start thinking about as the climate
Mm-hmm.
continues to shift.
Yep.
So, but thank you so much, Julie. This was wonderful. And if anyone
You're
does
welcome.
have any remaining questions or comments, feel free to send them later. You have Julie's email there, and I will also
Yep.
send it when we have the recording. And hope you enjoyed learning all about owls, their benefits to the ecosystem, and stay tuned Next month we have, let me put it
I
in the
was gonna
chat
say,
really quick.
what is next month?
We
Remind me.
have April 20th, mushrooms, common mushrooms of the yard and garden.
Nice.
And we
Okay,
don't actually
cool.
have May up yet, but that will be our Sting, Spores, and Stinks, which I
Ooh,
think is
that's
your
a good
new
one.
one that I really wanted.
That is a new one. I have to finish it.
Sorry about that.
I was like, I'm almost done. I was like, that's debatable, but it always gets done.
Yes, it'll always get done. So
It always
thank
does.
you all for joining us, and thank you,
Cool.
Julie, for
Yes,
sharing
see you
your
all. Stay safe
knowledge.
in your weather over there.
Yes. Oh,
We're gonna
so
go
awful.
enjoy our snow, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy what's happening, but
Crazy,
thank you
crazy.
all.
All
Stay
right, see
safe.
y'all soon.
See you soon.